Hello and welcome to another Starfield episode here on the MoleRP channel. My name is Chaos Mole, and today we want to talk about the melee combat and sneaking capabilities in Starfield. Before we do this though, I have to make a few things clear. First things first, this is all in theory, right? Nobody outside of Bethesda or Xbox has really ever played this game, and this is all what we could gather from interviews, from trailers, and all sorts of online stuff we found. So the chances are that things can change quite a bit till the game is coming out, or have already changed, right? This is all in theory, and this is also not a video where I'm telling you what's what, but where I want to start a discussion, where I want to know your opinion on the matter and how you think about all of this. So after the video, head down below into the comments and let me know what you think. Now, let's talk about melee combat. I will be honest, I was surprised when Starfield showcased melee combat. Yes, melee combat has always been a staple in Bethesda games for many years and for many games, right? But they always made kind of sense. They make absolute sense in a fantasy setting like Elder Scrolls, and they even make sense in a Fallout setting because, well, the world did go to shit. Weapons and ammunition might be hard to come by, and having a melee weapon might be the smart thing to do. But in a world like Starfield, where society is still intact, where we have technology, where we have ammunition, where we have range weapons, melee weapons feel a little bit like an outlier, right? And I was first thinking, maybe they're taking the Warhammer 40k approach, right? If you've ever played Warhammer 40k, you know that even though this is playing in the far future and they have the range weapon, they also love to use melee weapon because it's pure fantasy. It's cranked up to 11, it's crazy, and it doesn't really try to be realistic. Whereas Starfield, on the other hand, does try to do that, right? They are trying to be a little bit closer to realism, and I was thinking, yeah, maybe if they're trying that, we would not really get any melee combat at all. Well, good news is we do. We get melee combat, but from what they have shown, it wasn't really that great. They are only very few seconds in this whole Starfield Direct where they even show melee combat, and in most moments it's not even melee combat what they're showing. It's this last effort ditch when an enemy is coming too close to you, when you have been using all your range weapons, and then you are using your melee weapon to do the last attack or to defend yourself. There was only this one scene where they actually actively showcased how somebody was using melee, right? Where they're throwing a grenade, somebody was lying on the ground, and then they could attack with their melee short sword, and they showed one scene where they attacked with an axe. It was super brief, and this is why you are not seeing that really in the background here right now, because I don't want to show 5 seconds of gameplay over and over again. The information we have when it comes to melee is still very limited. But why are you making this video then? Well, that's the thing, right? The game is coming out in 1.5 months, and the information we really have about the melee combat is not that great. And even when you are looking at range and melee weapons, it looks even more dire. You can see it right here. This is the inventory with a range weapon. And by the way, if you want to know what all those stats mean, there is an extra video I already created where I go through the stats of the range weapon in Starfield, and you can find the link in the video description below if you want to check that out. But look at this gun. It has all the stats, right? It gives you all the necessary information you have to know about this gun, and this is only a normal weapon. It even shows you the mods, how you can modify this gun. And it gives you the idea of, okay, range weapons, man, there is so much to do here. This is crazy. And then, unfortunately, we are going over to the melee weapons, and it looks like this. And it's wait a minute. We only have damage, the mass of the item, and how much it's worth. There's not even an attack speed there. This is less information we had in Fallout 4, which came out, what, 7 years ago? And it slowly gives you this idea of, whoa, wait, there's also nothing how I can modify my melee weapons. Okay, again, I will be honest, I didn't really expect that I can create like a flame hammer like in Fallout 4 or something completely crazy, right? They try to be a little bit more realistic with this game, and we have to keep that in mind. But it still feels like melee weapons are an afterthought in Starfield, and we're not really at the point where I feel like that melee weapons could actually be something like usable, something of value, especially later on. And we haven't even seen if there are rare melee weapons or even legendary melee weapons, right? That information is completely missing on us, and I'm really, really hoping that they exist, because if they don't, then melee combat will be, well, probably not really usable in endgame, right? They made it clear that there are some melee builds out there. They showed us this crazy build where somebody is basically doing the one punch man, where they're punching everyone in the face, and that's hilarious. But it makes you wonder how much melee combat there really is. And the next part we have to talk about, which is kind of part of the melee combat, is sneaking around. Now let's make something very clear. Sneaking in Bethesda games has been a staple for so many years. Sneaking was always a part of Bethesda games, and some games did it pretty well, some others had it functional. But there was always this feeling of, wait a second, what am I doing here? Am I visible? Do the enemy know that I'm here? Is it really smart to attack this enemy, or in the end, will this enemy survive the attack? And then I have a whole base who's just hunting my ass down, right? Like sneaking and then later on going into assassination was always a dangerous thing to do. Now, the good news is that thankfully in Starfield, we are getting upgrade to sneaking. We are finally seeing, well, we have always been seeing if we are being seen by somebody or not, but we are also getting now information if we can be heard. If you didn't know, in most of the Bethesda games, enemies can hear you, and that hadn't just anything to do with the armor you have been wearing. Of course, right, if you were running around in a plate armor, then chances were pretty high that the enemy can hear you. But with that said, even with leather armor or with some light armor, depending on what you were doing and how you were moving around, chances were still pretty high that enemies could hear you and would turn around the moment you were getting too close to them. So you had to find the right equipment, you had to find the right perks to really make it work. And now Starfield is actually giving you like a sound bar in the top of your screen where you can then see, okay, do I create a lot of sound? Am I visible? What is going on here, right? Like you are finally getting that information you have been basically craving in the other Bethesda games, and it is a huge upgrade. Now, with that said, sneaking and stabbing somebody seems to be still very risky. If you are thinking back to, let's say, Fallout, there was always this debate, which is the right way to do it, right? Like, do you want to be somebody who is taking out their enemies from afar? Or do you go in and stab everyone in the back? Stab, 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 right? And especially at the beginning, stabbing was always super risky, because you could get similar outcomes with a ranged weapon by staying far away from the enemy, not being detected, and then doing sneak attack after sneak attack after sneak attack with just a sniper rifle. Even though the enemy was alerted to your presence, you would still get those sneaking attacks because they haven't found you yet. The problem is when you are stabbing somebody, and let's say the enemy survives, they turn around immediately, because, well, they just got stabbed, and they will see you, and the whole base knows that you were there. And then you were in a pickle, because most of the time when you were playing an assassin character, enemies don't really know that, well, you're not really made to fight enemies head on. You're sneaking around and stabbing people, right? So it was always this danger of high risk and not necessarily high reward. I think that's very important to point out. Of course, later on, when you had the right perks, when you had the right equipment and all that, sneaking around and stabbing people was really, really rewarding and really fun. But to get to that point, you had to put so many gameplay hours into the game that it sometimes didn't feel as rewarding. So I'm really hoping that in the end, they will make some heavy improvements, like we have actually seen also in the Starfield Direct, that there is now like an emergency alert thing enemies can activate when you are in a base. And so it seems like this is in theory that you can stab somebody. They might be alerted to your presence, but all the enemies in the base, all the other ones, will not be alerted to your presence. And if that is the case, that would be a huge improvement, because as I said, there was always the danger of sneaking around and stabbing people. Not that you were not successful against this one enemy, but that later on, the whole base knows that you were here and you are in some big, big trouble, right? And so it seems like in Starfield they are trying to minimize that a little bit and give you more chances to actually sneak around. Of course, silencer on guns will be important. They have been showcasing that. But I'm hoping that sneaking feels meaningful and rewarding. They can be high risk. I don't mind that. But give me the reward at the end. So my question to you is, in the end, how do you feel about the melee probabilities in Starfield? And what do you think about sneaking? What can be improved, and what would you wish to see in a game like Starfield when it comes to sneaking around and stabbing people? Let me know down below in the comments. With that said, thanks so much for watching. Please don't forget to leave a like. And also, if you're new to the channel, you want to see more Starfield, but also some Diablo videos I'm doing here on the MoleRP channel, subscribe to the channel. With that said, thanks so much for watching. Stay safe. Bye-bye.